Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, targets identified as a roster begins to come into vision for Grant McCasland. And which part of yesterday's conversation may we just say, never mind about?
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you and plenty to dive into as we continue to roll through the week. On today's episode, we'll revisit a conversation just had regarding the pursuit of a 105-man roster limit. Whoops, never mind. That may be a question I'll ask coming up in just a moment. We'll spend some time talking Texas Tech hoops. Want to get to some targets Texas Tech has been linked to, and maybe some soon to bubble to the surface as far as some agreements and additions are concerned. And, of course, considering what a roster here or there could look like, where I want to kick off our conversation, Chris, because I think maybe some visions starting to come into focus as to what the makeup could sort of be. I would guess this is based in some part via those they are pursuing or identifying, or maybe you've got an idea who's already identified themselves as a future Red Raider. So you take it however you want to, but it seems like some things beginning to clear up as maybe the immediate future is concerned for sort of the identity or personality or the makeup of this roster moving forward.
Yeah, I think, like, I'm sure you're like me. You've had a million people asking you, like, what's going on, and it's just like, and there's curiosity, there's panic, there's, I don't know, excitement. I think it's what's wild to me is I gather some people are more interested in this than the actual season at times, like on the results of the games and everything like that. Just trying to figure out, and everybody in the country is in the same boat. Everybody's out there trying to rebuild their roster, and it's just a next level of recruiting out there. So in that vein, I was like, okay, let's try to connect dots. Some that maybe you don't, that aren't ready to be connected yet. Some that maybe are, but I think people are trying to figure out, okay, what may this look like? And this, keep in mind, folks, this could, these targets or connections could change in the next 5 minutes, but at some point we have to put something together and try to get it out there, unless you just wait until it's all completed, and that wouldn't be any fun. And so, yeah, so, oh, yeah, that's right. And yet, I think there could be, version 1, 2, 3, and 4 of these things as we go along, right? Over the next week to 3, 4 weeks to 6 weeks, even if you go back to last year. But there's a lot of, I think, connections that you can with program and prospect or portal target that you can connect. And I guess what I was going to try to attempt to do is say, let's take the team that just finished up. Let's take that 8-man rotation, and then let's try to plug in some of these pieces to what you're, to what like the 2025-26 version could look like. In Grant's mind or in Grant's vision and Coach Linder and all that stuff. And you can kind of start to see, okay, I see what they're thinking, or this would replace this or whatever. Not that that's exactly how this will go, but we've already seen prospects that are linked to visits this weekend. We've seen other prospects that you've, connected with, or there's a million people out there following this stuff, whether it's agents or recruiting services or just fans or whatever, that you connect all these dots. So, because we've got some names and then you've got some holdovers. And I think that it's important to note too, people are always curious, how do you get turned on to this guy or this guy when there's 800 people out there? Yes, there could be a connection. Yes, there could be a prior relationship. Yes, it could fit a need, but how does it get to that point? And I think it's important to note that you trust your your film evaluation and your relationships, but you also have to understand that there are third-party companies or third-party scenarios that help some of these schools like speed that process up. Hey, and I think most schools out there are using some level. Some are wildly expensive, some are everyday type stuff, but it helps you kind of sort through what you're looking for. Whether I'm looking for this or this classification or this kind of player or this skill set, it allows you to sort through it. Because what I gather that you'll see that Texas Tech, and there's some commonalities here to some of these targets, to some of the players that you are trying to replace. And that's why I think it's pretty interesting. So that's why I think you get a pretty clear vision of the way Grant maybe what his mindset is of what a team may look like, or the way he would want to play ball, if that makes sense. So anyway, with that, we can kind of get into some of this stuff. There's also some preseason top 25s out there that if you follow some of the breadcrumbs out there by some of the national folks on what your team would look like on paper and who may or may not be coming back, I think that's interesting to note as well. So with that, I'll be quiet and I'll allow you to.
Where does the offseason work in? Because I noticed you went to preseason there. I thought we just finished the season.
Yeah. Well,
already back to pre. Okay.
These are the way too early top 25s.
That's Chris. There is no offseason.
True.
A lot of what we're talking about today, I think, would indicate that. And by the way, you're talking about describing the process and who can help facilitate getting to the guy you want to get to. And it makes me just want to shout out a guy like Willie Lyles, former outlaw, now consultant, and many other who played those types of roles. Do you remember Willie Lyles, Lake Seastrunk, et cetera? Oregon, Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University, DVDs for $25,000. Again, consultant now in 2025. But I would like to get back to
you went way back there, buddy. Wow,
that was one of the stories I enjoyed the most, man.
That
$25,000 scouting DVD. I thought, price well paid. I think
well played.
Am I wrong though?
No,
those are the consultants of today, or some of them at least.
and some of these types of folks are very. It's a service that every school would use. Some of these are like very high end that only would maybe use one institution per league. Some of these are some schools are like, I don't know if I want to buy into them or whatever. And again, it's all to each his own on what, but time is of the essence in some of these situations. And if there is a company or an individual or whatever it may be that can kind of vet a lot of this and help speed that process up, I think it would behoove you to because it's not just about the kind of player that I want. If they can find out without me having to find out very expensively, hey, he's a knucklehead. Like he's got some problems. And so, that kind of thing too. So,
sure. Without having to come in and by a mistake.
Well, or get them under contract and then go, we've made a very expensive mistake. Right. To use your steak analogy again, that just there's a miss in front of it. but a lot of the preseason top 25s, which will, like these fantasy roster thing that we'll put together, a lot of these top 25s will change and be updated every couple of weeks or every month as rosters start to get set and everything. But some of them indicate like things like, which I don't know if we know for sure. I just think it's interesting because these are some of the national writers that I know that the program talks to, or that have had access to the program and have stories written on them nationally. But Christian Anderson returning, Federico returning, Kevin Overton returning, Darion Williams and JT Toppin not returning, or questions about if they will return. Because I saw one person, right? They were second round draft picks, both of them. So you just have to figure out what all this looks like. So let's get to building this thing.
First, today's episode brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades with Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. And their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from more than 400 top brands, you're going to find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trademaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn to take your business to the next level. Join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM. That's supplyhouse.com/TM, and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with only a few clicks. Plus, use our promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's SH5 at supplyhouse.com.
Let's get to building this thing. You ready?
Yeah, you were talking commonalities also, and I was excited about that because commonalities with an Elite Eight team are exciting. So I'm curious to hear about some of this.
Because I think what you'll see and what you're going to find here is the commonalities would be now. What I'm about to lay out for you is a bit of a bigger group than I think what just would have left here. If it were to play out like I guess in our fantasy world that we would want, but I think I'm basing this on some reality too. These are realistic options. But I think the common theme here is what I think that the analytics help you sort through, or it appears that you can see what Grant wants. You want quality 3-point shooting. I mean, right? I mean, that when you had multiple games this year, we have 7 different guys dropping threes in, and you're just overwhelming teams with your ability to shoot and score from a variety of different options. You're going to see this in the list I'm about to lay out. I think you'll see unselfishness, which also allows for the 3-point shooting to happen. High assists, low turnovers, unselfishness, because Grant has talked about some of the guys he's looked at. He's like, he didn't care if he scored a point. He's willing to pass it every time. He wanted to win. But unselfishness seemed to be a common theme here because some of these assist numbers are pretty salty as well. And then generally speaking, efficiency. You know, how are you a high usage player? Are you filling up the stat sheet, or do you to average 12 points a game, you're having to shoot it 20 times a game? Those kinds of things, because I don't think he's looking for, high volume usage, low efficiency output. I mean, that goes against everything they'd be looking for. Okay, so let's just play fantasy ball here on what we think we may know, or what we hope to know, or what seems to be realistic possibilities. Okay. I think that there's a really good chance that Christian Anderson and JT Toppin return. No one has announced that, and I don't know who's announcing this stuff. Does it come from player or their agent, the program, the collective, a recruiting service? I don't know. I don't know at what point you'll get announcements and all those things, or commitment announcements. But so if we can just, with our fantasy roster here, let's just assume Christian and JT are back, which there were questions about those. Let's assume Fede could come back, because I saw that written by Jeff Borzillo or Gary Parrish, one of the two guys, that he was set to come back. Haven't seen that officially, but he's allowed to with that extra year. If JT and Fede are back, then you've kind of got your big man combo, and I think that you can add to it, but we'll get to that. And then Kevin Overton, I think, is listed as a returner, but based on what we'll lay out, I don't know, but maybe not. Okay, so we've got a bit of a nucleus there, and I'm Leon Horner, maybe Mariella Kuntak, maybe, which I would hope, since he just got here. Emily Yalaho, maybe. Don't know where that's at. Maybe he and EY trade places. And Mariella Kuntak is the new EY. Maybe, I don't know. And so that's kind of the nucleus. Okay, now insert new pieces here. it appears you're going to have to replace Chance McMillan. You're going to have to replace Elijah Hawkins. You're going to have to replace Kerwin Walton, and you're going to have to replace Darion Williams in this conversation. Doesn't mean you have to replace Darion, but if he's going pro or out there, I think you've got to continue to move forward. Like you need to try to find a replacement if you can.
Yeah.
So we don't bury the lead here. This may be the highest ranked addition if you could go make it happen. And I think he would be a replacement for I can't envision a scenario to where the dollars would work to where you could have both. Because keep in mind, there are dollars involved here. There's rev sharing possibilities, all that. Lawan Watts from Washington State, to which you're going to go, who's that? I didn't exactly watch a lot of Lawan Watts this year at Washington State. But when we dig a little deeper, boy, does it look a lot like Darion Williams. We're averaging nearly 14 a game. We're pulling down about 6 or 7 boards a game. We're dropping about 4 to 5 dimes a game. And we're 6'6", 230.
Big boy. Seems
pretty Swiss Army knife-ish to me.
Mm.
I'm guessing he's just checking all kinds of boxes on the analytics and efficiency, and you've got this size piece that you can spin up, spin down, to where we can go small with him, we can go big with him, however you want to do it. And that seems to be a square peg, square block that would, I'm not saying he is D5 or he's as good, but it seems to be a natural comparison to make and connect the dots. Texas Tech has been connected with this player. That would seem to be a pretty good fit to as your starting 3-man or starting 4, depending on how you want to do your lineup. Okay, so there's one. The other one is a kid that's set to visit is Isaiah Pasha. I think is how you say his last name. He's a Delaware kid. He's set to visit this weekend. This is a bigger guard at 6'4", 190. He doesn't shoot the 3 as well as some of these other possibilities do, but he would seemingly be a bigger version and table setter compared to what Elijah Hawkins was. He's just a bigger, wider version of him. And I think he's averaging close to 4 assists a game. And he, I think, can play some, if not be your point guard. However you want to do Christian in this fantasy scenario. If you want him to be the main point, or if you want Isaiah to be the main point and you play them next to each other, whatever you envision there, if you're Grant McCasland, or have them on the floor at the same time, they can interchange.
Chris Q, basketball fan. What do you want? I kind of like Anderson off the ball, honestly. I know he could do both, but I don't know. I sort of like him more off the ball. What do you think?
I know that there was some visions that prior to last season that he's our big picture point guard. Like we see him as an elite point guard, big picture, but he's never really done it before. So,
and more of a scoring point guard, I guess, than maybe what we just came from.
I think so. I think so. Maybe more points, less assists. But still, he runs that middle ball screen as the point better than anybody that I've seen since Keenan Evans, and it's just big time work. But he also pours in a lot of threes because he's off the ball, and I think that's so. I don't know what I would want. I would probably say similar to what you saw last year, where he's got the ball in his hands a lot, but he's not necessarily the primary guy there. So I'm gonna sit on the fence on that one, but more I would say more to what you said and be more like it was last year, where it's not solely his responsibility, but some of the time.
Well, you're right, because it's just a question about, does it impact his scoring negatively if he was having to run the show? But the way in which that we've seen him with the ball in his hands be able to manufacture things and score, pretty fun to watch too. So
yeah, that's right.
I'm interested in either. I'll vote with that.
But if you're going to tell me that Christian Anderson's going to be a part of it, I think they will figure it out. He's just too good, and he wants to be coached, and he's got so much versatility and IQ that I just don't worry. And I can envision the scenario if you say, Isaiah Pasha, you coming in this weekend on a visit, we like what we see, you're locked in. I can see that all those conversations are happening, but also you're probably playing that out in September and October and even in November and December going, what works best? How do we want to do this? Who starts, who finishes, who's good next to each other, all that stuff. Okay. So in these terms, we've replaced D5, maybe not ably, but we've tried to put the pieces together where we replaced D5 and Elijah with Isaiah Pasha and Lawan Watts. Now, how do we replace Chance McMillan and Kerwin Walton? I think you've also heard of a visit coming in this weekend from UNC Greensboro named Donovan Atwell. He's I'm getting all these guys. He's 6'5", 190. He's a lefty. I think he's originally from Houston. He shoots 39% from three. He is somebody that was a third-team all-conference guy and a piece to the puzzle here. He would seemingly replace one of these guys. I don't exactly know if I would say more Kerwin or more Chance, but maybe he's just Donovan Atwell, and that looks a bit different. The other one is Tyree Bryan from Santa Clara. Now, Tyree Bryan is 6'5", 220. He shoots 42% from three, and he averages 10 points, 4 boards, and a close to 2 assists a game. And is he more Kerwin? Is he more Chance? But you're getting these guards, wings that are efficient, that shoot it well, that have some size to them, but these are all rumored to either have visited, gonna visit, or willing to commit sight unseen. And there's interest in a lot of these guys. Like, I think Pasha's got Gonzaga after him. Atwell had Tennessee after him. So if any of this changes in 5 minutes from now and they cancel a visit or they commit elsewhere, sorry for going through our fantasy basketball roster building exercise, but we're trying the best we can.
We're trying to speak it into existence is what we're trying to do.
Yes.
Board mission.
The wild cards here in different ways. I've heard the name of Elijah Saunders. He's a University of Virginia player. He's about 6'8", 230. I've heard his name linked. I think you still kind of wonder how Overton and Federico and like EY and Leon all factor in here, because dollars factor in here too. Who wants what role do you want, and how much money do we have to allocate to you? Well, we don't have that much. Are you if you're wanting that, or hey, we'll be willing to pay you, but we can't give you this time on the floor. I mean, so there's all these dynamics as Grant and his staff get on some whiteboard at the Womble, and they've got a list and some targets and some dollars, and you're trying to put all the puzzle together. But that would seemingly be an 8-man rotation. If Fede's back, if JT's back, if Overton's back, if Christian's back, and you get the combination of Atwell, Pasha, Watts, and Bryan, is it good? I think it could be under Grant McCasland. Is it top 25 good? I think it could be under Grant McCasland. Is it as good as last year? I don't know. That's a lot to ask, but you're efficient. That's a group that is bigger, I think, in some ways. And you're as good behind the arc. Now, whether all that translates and all that, or do we get into wild cards like a Saunders or some unnamed big here or some new guard here because somebody decided to go to Gonzaga or to Tennessee or whatever. So that's as good as I can do right now.
It's kind of like bet on some of this or take the field, whatever you like, because there are also all these things out there we may not even know about yet. So,
and probably are.
Yeah.
Yes. And probably because I think what you're seeing is the dollars involved here are at least double in some cases to what was being spent last year. And we'll get into that, Cowan, now on what the court case has said, because now this process for the collective to operate under old rules has now been delayed a bit. And And so you can still conduct business the old way for an unknown period of time, which could be just until next Monday. So,
oh God, we're back to the deadline. Is it a deadline or is it not a deadline conversation?
True.
Terrific. So do we go back and amend our previous conversation? I know we were talking about in that 105-man regard, a lot of football-oriented stuff. Is it strictly back to saying never mind on that? Or what can you tell us as we wrap up our conversation today about what transpired really just in the hours that followed that conversation?
So Judge Wilkin out on the West Coast, it was a 7-hour proceeding. There was a lot of people heard from, lawyers and complaints, and people just trying to tell their version of the story or why this would be good or not good. There was the NCAA was there, all that stuff. The gist is this. To dumb it down, this is going to get, I mean, based on all the legal experts, this is going to get approved. This settlement is going to be, she basically is saying, don't quote me. However, it's a pretty good settlement. Okay. So to which I think the schools are rooting for. So I'm clear. I think the NCAA is rooting for this as well. Again, we want some rule and regulation guardrail type of activity, but there's enough people out there that are trying to poke holes in it because it's what would hurt their business or their thing. And she did listen to a few of those things to where the amendment part is going to come here. I don't know if we're going to get a 105-man football roster this fall or really any limitations on a roster for the foreseeable future. I just don't know what that looks like yet. She wanted to, I think the term that she used was phase in or to grandfather in certain people, which I have since been able to confirm. Let's just keep this in a football conversation. I've been able to confirm since that conversation came out and we had our conversation about having to make cuts and all that. You may not have to cut walk-ons, but you may have to cut some scholarship guys if you are overcommitted at the 85-man limit. And so, but Joey may be able to have a roster of 112 players this fall and not have to trim it to 105, but you're only allowed to have 85 scholarships. So, so there may be some guys on your team where you can keep the backup deep snapper or the backup punter, and you may not have to get into some of that stuff. However, if we've come in with a portal guy and they've replaced a current scholarship player and they're just better than them, and we don't see a vision forward for that player, we may have to make a difficult choice there. So there's that, and we'll continue to monitor that. The one last thing I'll say before we wrap is that she was very concerned about how this agreement is a 10-year agreement, and is it fair to a 14-year-old out there that's nowhere near college yet that they would be beholden to some of these rules that I'll stamp, whenever I do approve this thing, that they have to follow those same set of rules because this agreement is so long, and how much money would it potentially cost them and all that. So they're going back to the drawing board. They're going to try to work on these things and correct some of this language, but it's imminent on a version of this being approved. So sorry for being long-winded.
I think you were short-winded because there's a whole lot more wind you could share on the matter. I know that. I mean, it's hard to grasp, but I'm sure we'll continue to try to do that in some days to come. And that's another great reason as to why you want to be subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts, in case we come back on the very next episode and have to say, never mind on what we just said yesterday. And, talk about the NCAA here after all. So
because a lot of the gray area, I'm not ready to say that Matador Club or things like it won't be allowed to continue to do their thing if they so choose.
Let it stay. Let it. I've grown to love it. I'm so fond of the Matador Club in such a short amount of time.
So I think that there's more potential lawsuits there. Because I think that's the argument, is like, you're costing, by telling the collective you can't do this, you're costing athletes a lot of money in the future. So where we land or what is allowed to be litigated going forward, I'm not real sure, but I know everybody involved really is ready for some sort of guideline and structure. But right now, when there's no rules, you're kind of having fun with it. I mean,
I think you want the guideline, you want the structure to an extent, but also people probably know where we've come from all these years. And at the very beginning of this NIL thing, I remember having these conversations on other shows and saying, be very careful that you're not just paving a path to say hello to the new sheriff. Surprise, it's the old sheriff. Here's the NCAA again. Eventually, you always kind of knew there'd be that sort of direction we could veer. But at the same time, I think there have been a lot of great things that have come about as a result of this, as it relates plain and simply to an American or whatever citizen is in this country trying to monetize their time and effort. And I don't know why once upon a time that was illegal for those in like an 18 to 23-year-old range, but that was stupid. And I think there have been some positive benefits from this. So you do want the guidelines and you want some of the structure, but you also remember some of how, I guess, inhibiting that structure was previously. So yeah, the lawsuits, the attorneys going to be well fed, I think, and continue to be so for many months to come. But we'll keep up with it as best we can. So appreciate the insight there, Chris, and the time as always. Enjoyed it. I'm one of those that's sick enough to enjoy these kinds of conversations. So I mean that sincerely. And I'll be back here for the next one. So looking forward to it, man. We'll see you then.
Yeah. But the last little nugget I'll drop here is I think that it's very realistic that there are Big 12 basketball programs, let's keep it in your league, that are going to be somewhere between $8 to $15 million rosters out there this coming fall. And that's just the reality of what you're dealing with and where the cost has gone, which is
sure.
I mean, so I don't think that is sustainable. I really don't. But I guess we'll all just kind of go through our fantasy exercise as many times as we need to, and we'll see how much we got right, how much we got wrong, and all that. And I get the interest, and I love the interest. I think that it's awesome, and that's why your program is better than most, because you have a lot of people that care. So anyway, until next time, hey man, guns up. Thanks for everybody for subscribing and listening to what Calvin and I do here. We've had a good time with it, so we'll try to keep it going.
Those numbers are hard to fathom, and you may think it's not sustainable, but actually, if there are enough that want it sustained, it may mean that other things are not sustainable in order to keep this part sustainable. So something to consider there. Yeah. That's a lot of sustainables to wrap up the program. But you never know, Chris. $1, $2, $3 million could be the difference for a team, and I don't know, at least getting a shot off when you got a chance to win a national title, or just peeing down your leg. You never know what could make the call. So,
oh man, shots fired.
Oh, we just got to make sure that we're leaving no stones unturned, right?
Yeah.
It can come down to the smallest thing,
and
at the goal.
And speaking of shots fired, I did learn that even bad people do win.
Oh yeah. You ever heard that song, Farther Along? We'll know more about it. Farther Along, we'll understand why. They've been talking about it for a long, long time. It won't change today. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for being out there. Thanks for being subscribed. Get that way if you're not on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Appreciate the everydayers, as always, for being out there, as well as the Matador Mob. Hit the show notes and find a link to a free 14-day trial if you're interested in joining that crew. That's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks, as always, for the time, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.